In today's episode, Chef Erica will show us how to make her delicious tzimmes using Prairie Street Prime's Kosher USDA Prime short rib cubes.
I just look at it and it comes apart. Oh. Yeah, that's killer. Really good. Welcome to the Prairie Street Prime Culinary Kitchen. I'm Chef Erica, and I'm so happy to be back here today to bring you another luxury kosher experience. Now today, I'm working with Prairie Street Prime's USDA Prime kosher short ribs. You may not know this, but literally only 5% of the meat in the entire US is classified as prime, and we've got it right here. So it's your best quality, top of the line, luxury kosher experience when it comes to short ribs today. So what I'm gonna make is a kind of slightly contemporary twist on the classic holiday dish, tzimmes. My aunt used to make tzimmes every year for Passover. I loved it because it was sweet and rich and delicious. And this is gonna have all that same sweetness and richness, but we're gonna add some spices to it. It's not gonna be hot. It's not a spicy hot dish. It's just a really complex, layered, interesting flavored dish. So if you're not familiar with tzimmes, what is it? Well, it's a braise. It's a slow cooked stew of meat, usually a cut like a short rib, something that can really take the long, slow cooking. And it's got usually some sort of dried fruit in it, sometimes prunes, we're using apricots. Often it's got sweet potatoes or carrots. There's a lot of sweetness in the dish. It's a holiday dish, it's festive, it's warm, and it's great for doing in your multi-cooker. I haven't had tzimmes in years, and I'm pretty psyched to do this one. So as you can see, I've got my bone-in short rib cubes right here. And if you notice, there's this beautiful marbling on this meat. Not only does it have the external, the fat cap, but it's got great intramuscular marbling too. All of this nice fat, when we cook it nice and low and slow, is going to melt and dissolve into the meat and make it just succulent, tender, moist, and amazing. So I can't wait. So what I'm gonna do first is get this meat seasoned, of course, but notice that I have the meat out and I dried it off. Really important. Number one, when you're cooking meat, if you're putting it into a pan hot with oil, you have to dry it off. If you don't dry off your meat, you'll never get that deep, rich browning that we're looking for, because if there's moisture on there, you'll just get steam. And we don't want steamed meat. We want delicious caramelized meat. So this has been dried off on paper towels. I'm gonna season it up. Some kosher salt, pretty liberal on this, because this salt will also season the whole dish. I'm gonna flip those babies over. And short rib cubes, you know, it's like the name says, they're cubes, but sometimes they're not quite squared off cubes, so just get all the sides that you can get. And then a good amount of black pepper. Now you can adjust the seasoning in this dish to how you like it, if you want it more peppery, if you want it sweeter. You know, this is a dish you can really kind of play around with. Okay, so those are just really well seasoned. I like to get a good coating on that meat, like that. And then I'm going to put just a little bit of olive oil in my pot. I've already preheated my pot. And I'm just putting in a little film of oil because the meat already has that really great fat on it. So I don't need too much oil in there, but I just like a little bit just to get things going. And very carefully, I'm gonna lay these in there. Now, when you're browning off meat for a stew or for a braise, you wanna be careful in this first step not to overcrowd your pan. Make sure you've got a little personal space around each piece of meat. You want like a little breathing room for the meat. Otherwise, again, you're gonna get steam. We're not looking for steam, we want browning. So I'm gonna give these a couple of minutes on each side. It's really important that you take your time on this step and develop that browning, because that's where your flavor begins. That browning is the foundation of the flavor, so don't rush this step. When you're using something like a multi-cooker, after this step, it kind of does the work for you, so take your time here and do it. So now we're getting some nice browning on that. This deep browning on meat is critical. It is your key step in getting that flavor on your meat. So like I said, don't rush it. So now I'm gonna take these out. And what I really want you to see here is what is in the bottom of my pot. All this nice crusty brown stuff, that's got a name. It's called fond, F-O-N-D. Fond means foundation or base, and that's gonna form the very flavorful foundation for our sauce in here. Now I'm adding a little more olive oil because I need a little bit more fat in there to now get my aromatics going. I'm gonna add my diced onions and I'm gonna give that a stir. And one thing I always like to point out to people is that when I am stirring things like onions in a pan, I don't like to use a metal utensil for that. I don't like to do metal on metal. I like to use wood, or you could use silicone. It's better for your pots. Now, along with my onions and garlic, I'm going to add my spices. Because if you cook your spices at this point, along with your onions and garlic and your aromatics, the spices have a chance to really get like really hot and really develop their flavor. If I waited until I had everything in there with liquid and then I threw in my spices, I wouldn't kind of max out the flavor of the spices as much. You sort of take them to a certain level, then they'd stop. If we put spices in here before we add any liquid, it's like the spices can kind of go up to like an even higher level of flavor. So I always like to do that. So now my onions and garlic are looking good, getting soft, getting a little brown. So I'm going to throw all that in. Here is one little cinnamon stick. This is some powdered ground ginger. You could use fresh ginger too. Just smash up about a tablespoon of ginger. This is some cumin, ground cumin. This is that harissa, which I love. It comes in a tube or in a little jar, but like I said, you could use any other sort of chili condiment, or you could just leave it out, but I'm gonna toss my little harissa in there. And I'm just gonna give that all a good stir. I really wanna let the spices kind of mingle with the onions, kind of ride around on that sweetness from the onions and that like stickiness. There's sugar in the onions. The sugar's gonna get nice and hot, and it's gonna let those spices really toast and really develop. Remember, sugars can get really hot. They can go up to about 350, 360 before they burn. So that's why we like to put our spices in there. And you can see how this is getting darker and it smells amazing. Okay, now I'm gonna throw in those dried apricots. You could use prunes. Prunes are very traditional. Prunes, apricots, both, whatever you like. Put that in there. I'm gonna throw in my sweet potatoes. Traditionally carrots. Carrots are what we'd call like an anchor veg in Tzimmes. We're going for sweet potatoes. You get a similar result. I like the sweet potatoes because a little bit of the starch comes out and it helps to thicken up the dish. Just give those a little stir, get them all coated in all of that great, deep, flavorful, spicy, delicious stuff that's going on in there. Back in with the meat. Try to get it in a single layer if you can. And any juices that have come off, we want to recapture those. Now I'm adding about a cup of a good, hearty, kosher red wine into there. Now that wine is so important because that wine's gonna pick up all that fond, all that caramelization on the bottom. And I don't even have to worry about stirring that or scraping it up. The wine's just doing the work for me right now. And some chicken stock. And about a cup of that too. So now all my liquid's in, everything's in. Now I'm gonna switch it from saute to pressure cook. So I'm gonna hit cancel, that shuts off the saute. And now we're gonna go to pressure cook. And I'm gonna set it for 1 hour, and I'm gonna put on the lid. Now it's really important when you put the lid on that we make sure that we set it to sealing. So you can see on this, there's venting and there's sealing. You have to make sure your lid is locked in place and that you've switched to sealing. Otherwise, you won't have any pressure buildup and it won't cook, okay? It's a safety feature and it guarantees that you're gonna get great results. Now, it takes a little bit of time for the pressure to start to build up in the pot. So I set my clock for that hour. In about 10 minutes, the countdown clock will start. So there we go, I'm on sealing, I'm good to go, and in an hour, we're gonna have our delicious spiced kosher short rib tzimmes. I'm very excited about this one. Okay, so now let's check out our finished tzimmes. Very excited about this one. Now, when you're using a multi-cooker, an Instant Pot, any sort of pressure cooker, after the allotted cook time that you have programmed in, the Instant Pot automatically switches to just a gentle warming phase. So let's say you wanted to get this going and then you wanted to go out, run errands, go to the gym, whatever. You don't have to worry about it because it switches to this warming cycle and then you can just hold it until you're ready to eat it. And in that process, the pressure slowly starts to go down. Now, if you don't have time to wait and your cook time is up and you want to eat it, what you want to be really careful of is the steam release over here. So remember when we started with this, I moved this to sealing. The little valve on top went to sealing. Now it's slowly gone down to venting. And then this little red button is in the down position, and that's also an indicator that the pressure has been released. So if you're in a little bit of a hurry and you don't want to wait for it to switch to that other cycle and let the pressure naturally release, just be careful when you're opening this. Use like the end of a wooden spoon to push it instead of your bare hand, and put a towel over it because there'll be some hot steam coming out. You don't want that getting on you. You don't want a steam burn. You also don't want it going on your, your lights and your ceiling and all of that. But this one is good to go now. And so we're going to open this up and we're going to take a look at our delicious short rib Tzimmes. So you just turn the top and we release. Whoa, check that out. That smells really good. You can really smell the spices. Like I got this like whiff of warming spices, sweetness. This looks really good. I'm gonna pull out. Ooh, these are so tender. So tender that I can't even get it with the bone. There we go. It's like literally melting. It's so tender. And what's so beautiful is because we cooked it under pressure at that low temperature, it's going to be so juicy and so succulent. And let's get some of the vegetables. We have our sweet potatoes and the garlic and the onions and the ginger. Oh, there's my cinnamon stick. So I'm just gonna put some of this around it on the plate. Get some of that sauce for this out. And then I always like to finish my dishes with something green, some fresh herbs and herb sprigs, some chopped herbs. It just adds like a little, not just a little color, but like a little freshness on the plate. So this is just some roughly chopped parsley and cilantro combined because I do love cilantro. Any herb really would be great on this. And there we go. Now let's see how tender this short rib is. Look at that. It's like, I don't even have to push down on it. I just look at it and it comes apart. Let's take a little bite of this now. Trying to get some of that sweet potato. Oh. That is really good. Also, way better than any Tzimmes that my grandmother used to make. This is like Tzimmes level 2.0. This is really, really good. You can really taste those spices. Oh, there's that piece of apricot. Have to try that. Yeah, that's killer. Really good. So this is our Prairie Street Prime, USDA Prime, kosher short rib Tzimmes with sweet potatoes and apricots. This is a great dish. You can set it and forget it. Make it in the morning, serve it later at night. Great for holidays, for Shabbat dinner, for family dinner. Maybe you're having a party. You can put it out. People can serve themselves. It's a great one. So I hope you'll try it. And remember that if you like this recipe, subscribe to our Prairie Street Prime YouTube channel. Click that little like button, subscribe, share, tell all your friends. Also, please leave us feedback. We love to read your comments. We want to know what you're thinking. So tell us what you think of our recipes. Tell us what you want to see us do, because we are always looking for new ideas from you. And remember that we have new video content every Sunday at 2 o'clock right here on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me today here in the Prairie Street Prime Culinary Kitchen. I'm Chef Erica. I'm gonna go eat my Tzimmes now.
Subscribe to our channel now and set your notifications so you don't miss our latest recipes and chef-led tutorials. Then head over to prairiestreetprime.com to shop for your next big meal.